Welcome in, you guys. It's Kyle with Dirt Bike Channel. This is the Dirt Bike Channel podcast, and we have a special treat today because in studio right here, I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Rich Larsen, 5'11". You may know him. Rich, tell us, give us a hi here.
What's up? How is everybody?
Oh, man,
glad to be on, and yeah, man, this is exciting. I'm glad to be the first guest. This is big, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And you know, I always like to go big, so I went with like the most awesome guest for my first.
It's real big, man. I'm a big deal. Yeah, everybody's gonna go, who?
Super big. No. Even Graham Jarvis knows who you are because Graham Jarvis follows you on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he does, man. That was dude. It's kind of a funny story. I was actually. It's so ridiculous. So, okay, I am friends with very, very good riders, guys who are way better than me.
No way.
And at the time, I was actually riding with Colton Haker and Jeff Aaron. So Jeff Aaron is probably the best trials rider to ever come out of the United States. Incredible. He's the guy who's like, I watch him ride endurocross. And he has that trial style, and I watch it, and I'm just like, that is the style that I want. No, he's just like, it's like he hops from rock to rock. He hops from log to log.
Yeah.
There's just so much technical ability there. It's my favorite style. He may not be the fastest. I mean, he's crazy fast.
Yeah.
But his style is my favorite. And we were riding at Colton Haker's house, which, you know, Colton Haker's is very good as well.
Yes.
And
needs no introduction there.
Yeah, sure. And my wife was with me, and you know, we're hanging out, having a good time. You know, everybody's getting along great, and I looked at my phone, and you know, Graham Jarvis followed me, and I was like, you know, I'm riding with guys who are way better than me, and it's a privilege to ride with them. I'm so thankful that I've been able to meet these guys and ride with these guys. It's incredible to be able to watch what they're capable of, but then. At the same time, I was kind of more psyched to get the follow from.
That's so funny.
Which is just a whole
Graham.
thing about how social media rules our lives. And man, oh man, yeah, I guess it was kind of ruling mine at the time. But
well, if you guys don't know, you should follow Rich Larsen on Instagram. He's got over 21,000 followers on Instagram as of right now, and growing all the time. You say something on Instagram that you say, "I'm not having fun unless I'm miserable."
You got it.
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
I want you to kind of. Expound on that a little bit.
Sure.
Rich is a very accomplished extreme enduro racer and an enduro cross racer. We're going to get into that a little bit. One of his more recent races was Last Dog Standing this year, right? 2019. Yes, I believe you finished 6th overall.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
behind guys like Alfredo Gomez and Colton Haker.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Both Alfredo and Colton were there. It was crazy, man. You know, the thing that I was most proud of was only 8 riders finished the full race.
It sounds kind of like Ayresburg.
Yeah, 8 guys finished. It was 102 degrees. 8 guys finished, and I happened to come across in 6th. So I was very, very happy to be one of the guys that finished. And dude, I'll tell you what, it was miserable.
That is incredible. You're also the IRC tire guy. You've been putting out a lot of videos on the IRC USA Moto YouTube channel.
Yes, sir.
And I was just digging through some of those videos here in my kind of show prep, if you will.
Right on.
And you have, and we'll get into this as well, you have some of the best training that I have ever seen.
Thank you.
So, especially there was a video this morning that I was looking at on the double blip technique that I think you put out just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And that 3 to 5 minute video is literally the best explanation of the double blip that I've ever heard.
Right on.
Thank you, man. People have got to go over and check that out.
Yeah, man. I try to put a lot of I try to put a lot of effort in explaining exactly how these techniques work. There's so many complicated little things. I could make every video even longer because there's so many little things that you can learn. Little tiny things that you notice from doing them a million times. And I've done a double blip a million times, and there's a certain point where you can just kind of do it. And once you understand how to do it, it's easy. But I think a lot of guys, they try it once and then it's just too hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, they give up, or it's a little bit of teaching that maybe one of those little tips that I give in the video, maybe one of those will click.
Oh, it
and
does.
when one of them clicks, it's like it makes a world of difference.
It does, and that's a perfect segue into the last thing that I wanted to mention before I get into a bunch of questions.
Sure.
Is I did a training here with Rich. Rich does private training sessions.
Yes, sir.
With people, and it was literally the best money that I have ever spent as far as in learning how to ride a dirt bike. He kicked our butts. I think I was riding an XCW that day, so I actually had an odometer, and I think we only covered like 3 miles.
Yeah.
And at least a mile and a half of that was going from the truck up to the little stomping ground, little training ground.
Yeah.
So
Not far.
Yeah, and these training sessions can last, different amounts of time depending on everything that happens.
Sure.
But what I will say is I've never had my butt kicked that much
awesome.
in a short amount of time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was incredible. And the thing that was so nice is just the passion that you have for teaching, the gift that you have in articulation.
Thank you, man.
To say, here's what I'm seeing you do, and here's what I want you to do.
Right, sure.
And then also, you're always improving your craft. I noticed a couple of times you were saying, you know what, I just realized this is a better way
Absolutely,
to
man.
explain what I'm doing.
And that's the thing is I love teaching because if I can remember exactly what I taught, I can get better and better in explaining it and better in putting in words that people can understand. So not only does it help me with, in general, just training people, it helps me understand in my own writing, and then it helps me be able to articulate it in a video form. Obviously, when you're with me personally, it's going to be better. But in video form, I get all that from teaching. From teaching in person, I memorize exactly the kind of things that I'm saying to help articulate and help you understand exactly the things that you need to be doing to, make whatever we're doing happen. And in articulating that in person, then I can take it to video form. And, hopefully keep making some good videos about teaching. I've got a lot of stuff that I have in my head that I want to put out because every day I learn something new,
Right.
And that's the beauty of dirt bikes, man. It never ends.
Yeah, and that's where I can really relate to. I just pulled up here on my computer the notes that I took after the training session.
Oh,
And
right
we
on.
were out there for about an hour and a half, somewhere in there. And I've got like a full page here of notes. We talked about, different little things that we did. And I have reviewed this stuff, and I need to do more of that, and I need to schedule another training session with Rich.
Dude,
so.
I'd love that. Absolutely, man.
So I have a number of questions for you here, and I just kind of want to go across the board. We're going to talk about racing. We're going to talk about your history. I want to talk about your training regimen and some of these different things. What's your least favorite part? What's your most favorite part of dirt bikes? Diet, nutrition, and then maybe where you think our industry or the dirt bike industry, specifically off-road type stuff, is headed.
Absolutely, man.
So-
I've got some strong words about that.
That is very good. There we go.
Okay.
Got a couple. We got to have some drops in here every once in a
love
while. So my first question, Rich, is how did you get started in dirt bikes? Like, what did that look like? Did you just come right out of the womb with a dirt bike?
Dude, not at all. It's kind of crazy. It's an extremely long story, and there's so many ins and outs, and especially if you really analyze your life, right? As a person, I'm always thinking of my past and my present and the way that I ended up where I am. And I guess that's a good thing because, I think about where I am and I'm thankful for where I am. I'm very fortunate to be able to ride a dirt bike every day. But, so I've thought about it a million times, so I could talk about that for literally 3 hours. You know what I mean? Because there's so many different little paths that happen. But I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Basically, my first memory was my oldest brother. I'm the youngest of three, and my oldest brother Rob. He was riding it was probably like an '85 RM. 125, and I was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time.
Nice.
And that's kind of the first thing I remember. And I remember being a little bit scared watching him ride it, and I remember he rode through a ditch, and I just thought it was crazy. So I've always looked up to my oldest brother. He's he's 40 something now, and we still ride together. And so he was kind of the seed that got me going to wanting to ride, right? And I got my first dirt bike when I was 6 or 7. My family was by no means wealthy, and so I remember wanting a bike so bad, and my mom and my dad saying, you gotta save for it. So I cleaned horse stalls and mowed lawns.
Awesome.
And I saved dude, I was like 7 years old, and I saved it was like $400. And to a 7-year-old, $400 is
was it 10,000?
Dude, it's insane. I remember
or
just
more.
putting like $10 at a time in this envelope that my mom had, and she would write how much money was in the envelope, and just thinking, what am I doing? Like, I could go and spend all that on anything I want. $400 is like unlimited amount of money when you're 7. And just looking in the paper and just feeling like I was getting further away from my goal, which was to buy a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And finally, my parents actually helped me a little bit and threw in half. And so I think I bought like an $800 bike. It was a Roach. I mean, it was not a
No, that's
bike, but
cool.
I was psyched about it.
I get so many questions from kids saying like, how do I afford a dirt bike, or can you give me a dirt bike or whatever? And I come back to them and I'm like, look, I couldn't afford a dirt bike on my own until I was 29.
100%, man.
And so, but then I say, you know what, you've got to start working and saving money.
Yep.
And your parents are going to need to help you. But my best advice is to get some sort of a side hustle, a job, mow lawns, whatever, clean horse stalls, like what you were saying.
You gotta show that you're serious, you know. And I was serious about getting a dirt bike, and I remember my Fruit Loops smelling like horse manure because I was cleaning horse stalls so much that the horse manure smell was in my nose.
Oh yeah,
and that is something that's like it's burned in my brain. You know, that's an important thing to me.
That's a life lesson,
exactly,
too.
And
because
it
it's
was
like
something that happened when I was 7.
That's awesome.
So I was proud that my parents were there to say, nah, you gotta save, bro. You gotta save. And then I showed them I was serious. They helped me. I got the bike, and haven't looked back since.
And the rest is history.
That's
man.
right.
That is so cool. So how often do you try to ride?
I'm shooting for, okay, so it depends on when. I'm always riding, for sure 3 times a week at the least.
Okay.
But if I'm in training mode, so I have a race coming up here in December in Texas, and October, November is going to be full training mode. That's going to be 5 to 6 times a week for sure.
Cool. And these sessions, how long are these training sessions?
So usually
this is going to be an extreme enduro, right?
Absolutely. So this extreme enduro is honestly, I don't even know if they've released the info about it. It's kind of secret. It's coming up here, so I won't say anything about it, but I do know that it's going to be very taxing. And so for me, you can only train for so long, and there's a certain point where you start kind of working backwards. You
Interesting.
If you train for 2, I've always been a guy who, it's just like you were saying, we go and, I gave you a lesson. We went up and we rode 1 mile, and then we rode in one area for a very small amount of time. I mean, we didn't travel a lot.
Right.
It was a small area for a long amount of time.
Right.
And that's kind of my training is I go in, I find a good extreme enduro training area, and I will try every line and try to switch things up, try things differently. It's more about learning how to completely control the bike. You don't necessarily have to ride, 100 miles. I feel like when you get into that long distance, you're more conserving. It's a little bit different style. I'm trying to stay in the most extreme situations. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm moving very far, but I'm trying to stay in those extreme situations for as long as possible.
Yeah, and you're still building up the dirt bike stamina, all the different muscles that need to be strong.
Sure.
And that's one thing that I have noticed, and you've helped me to really notice, is the more that your skill improves, the less energy you expend.
100%.
Right?
100%. So that's a huge thing that I'm trying to really put out on the IRC YouTube, is not only just the tire stuff and showing people about products and everything like that, but also trying to just teach that it's a lot about learning how to be efficient at all times on the bike. There's an efficiency and that's why we look at guys like Graham Jarvis, who, obviously is probably the best rider ever. And
for the discipline,
he's probably the best ever. And he is 42, 44 years old. And there's a reason why he can ride at the highest level against guys who are 19, 20 years old, who are fit as they're fit as can be. They're training harder than anybody. And for some reason, Graham can still beat him. And it's his ability to be completely efficient on the bike. It's not about the guy who can necessarily go the fastest. Yeah. It's the guy who can be, everybody's going to get stuck in extreme enduro. So it's the guy who can get stuck and unstuck the quickest and the most efficient way and continue forward. So Graham is a master of that.
That was one thing that you kind of were teaching me and Tyler that day when we did that. That was one of the things you talked about, is getting unstuck.
Absolutely.
And I have used that just in my general riding. We were up in Idaho a couple weeks ago before I broke my finger, and I was watching people get stuck on obstacles in front of me, and then I would kind of like, okay, I see the terrain, I see what's happening, and then when I would get stuck, I would roll back.
Sure.
Because this is what Rich taught me. He's like, roll back an inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, 6 inches, and he's like, those few inches are the difference between you being stuck and getting out of the obstacle.
100%.
If you can look around, take a look at your surroundings, and don't expend so much energy. We're not going to sit here and spin the tire forever.
Exactly.
We're going to look at what is in front of us, front tire, rear tire, look at our surroundings, roll back a little bit, look outside the box, and then give a controlled amount of power.
That's great.
Not spinning the wheel.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's made a huge difference to me, and I'm hopefully going to be able to instill that in my kids as they're going.
You know, and it's not just an instillment in your riding skill. That's kind of a thing in life, right? I mean, you get into situations where the only thing you can think of is forward. And sometimes you got to take a second, go, hold on a minute. And you have to literally back up, you know?
Yeah.
And then get your momentum back and get going. So, you know, it's such a simple thing. And I'll tell you what, you'll be out riding in the trails by yourself and you'll learn how to instill it. And then I move on to a race format where there's chaos around you. Guys are going crazy. Guys are wrecking. Everybody's pushing their bike. You're in a race situation. If you can focus on taking the time, pulling yourself back, getting unstuck and continuing forward, your performance will be 10 times better than the guys who don't have the ability to calm down and relax.
Yeah.
And it's a great skill to have, whether you're a racer, rider, whatever it is, man. It's something that it's huge.
I love it. So tell me, how did you get started in racing?
Racing. So, you know, I rode since I was 7, and it was mostly just a family thing. We'd go out and ride in the mountains. I was a trail rider. You know, I loved riding. I loved following the sport. You know, I was following it in the time of Jeremy McGrath and Ricky Carmichael, and watching Supercross, motocross, whatever it was. Anything dirt bikes, I loved watching it. But I never took the jump to racing. And you know, there's kind of a couple reasons for that. But you know, I think a lot of guys get pushed into racing, or they can kind of view a older sibling. You know, I've got 2 older brothers. Neither of those dudes raced, and they were doing the same thing as me. So for me to be able to pull the trigger on going to my first race, there was nobody pushing me into it. It just had to be me wanting to do it. And that was very hard for me. I wanted to race, but I was kind of nervous. You know, you have to pull the trigger as a teenager, right? And there was a certain point, probably 18, 19 years old, I decided I want to go and ride an enduro cross race. And basically what happened was I got a KTM 300 for, you know, again, there's a million different reasons for all these things that happened, but let's just keep it short. I got a KTM 300, and everybody who rode a 300 at the highest level. So at the time, it was guys like Taddy Blazusiak, and at that time, enduro cross was kind of coming up. Extreme enduro was kind of coming up. The guys who rode the KTM 300, they were riding that discipline, enduro cross and extreme enduro. So I was like, okay, I want to ride enduro cross. And I found the biggest logs I can find and started learning how to ride over them. At the time I was 19. My first race was my first race ever was a AMA enduro cross race in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
I signed up for the amateur class, and I'll tell you right now, man, I signed up for the amateur class. My middle brother Jake, he drove down with me. He had a truck. I didn't have a truck at the time. So we loaded my bike in his truck. He drove me down. I signed up, and I at sign up, I thought I was going to win the amateur class. I was 100% sure that I've got this in the bag. What I'm going to do is win the amateur class, and then I'm going to move up to pro, and I'm going to battle with Taddy Blazuziak.
And it'll be just
plan.
A couple of weeks, right?
Exactly. That's how delusional I was. But you go, and I didn't even close to make the night show. You know, I got smoked by everybody. You know, it's a day qualifying program. I was nowhere near qualifying.
Yeah.
And that situation is one of those ones that kind of defines you. Either you say, make all the excuses in the world and say, you know, well, those guys have been doing it forever. And, you know, if I would have done it when I was this age, then I would have been, you know, a way better rider. If I would have raced, you know, this is my first race and whatever, and then never race again. Or you can take this humble sandwich that you had to eat and learn from it and train and continue forward. So I learned from it, and I just kept training, and it was really hard. I thought I was really, really good, and it turns out I wasn't at all. And I just kept training and slowly started racing more. Then I started racing local races, which was completely backwards. Again, I had nobody telling me what to do. I should have started locally, but I started nationally. Let's hammer down. You know, so all of those things, you know, you kind of have to learn trial by fire, right? And I think that it's hard, but also it was the best way for me to learn. And, you know, again, it got me to where I am right now, and I'm very happy.
That's so funny. So how many races in until you started qualifying for at least, you know, the spectator, the night show?
So that was in 2010, I guess, was my first enduro cross race in the AMA. And then I didn't race in the AMA for quite a while. And then I started qualifying in, you know, I started racing amateur stuff in here in Utah, local, you know, and anything I could find. Up in Idaho, I went and raced, and, you know, so I would race kind of the amateur enduro cross stuff. Mm-hmm. And then finally, when I felt like I was good enough, which I started winning the amateur stuff. You know, I built a nice track, and I just hammered laps, man. I've been hammering laps for a long time.
Yeah.
Hammer laps, and it worked, and I got better, and I started winning local stuff. And then I decided to move up to the go back to the AMA racing, the national level. And I started qualifying into the amateur class in 2013. And then at the time, I actually started training with a guy here from Utah, Nick Thompson. And he's like a moto dude. Like, he's super fast on a moto track. And he kind of was getting into enduro cross. We started training together. We started building a track. He elevated my level huge. So that was a huge kind of really lucky thing that happened, was being able to hook up with Nick Thompson. And me and him trained together forever. And then I moved up to pro in 2015 because I pointed out of... So basically, at the time, I was racing both pro and amateur in the AMA just to get extra track time for the amateur class. And I remember, I think it was San Francisco Endurocross. I ended up doing really well in the pro class and ended up scoring like 8 points in the pro class, and it points me out of amateur class. So I didn't ever get to race amateur again. So then I just focused on pro and started hammering, and I got some good results here and there, but like I said, it's a whole encompassing story of a million different things that got me to the point where I'm at now, and it's awesome.
Well, that's a perfect transition to my next question, which is, it seems like you have moved from endurocross over to extreme enduro.
Yes.
So talk to me about why that is, and what does that look like? Why move from one discipline to the next? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Man, there's a couple reasons, I guess.
And maybe just super quickly, you could just real briefly say, here's a synopsis of endurocross, and then here's what extreme enduro is.
So endurocross is like the hybrid of off-road racing. What their plan was to take every obstacle that you would hit in a off-road race, whether it's a desert race, Hare and Hound, GNCC, Works race, whatever it is. They take every obstacle that you would hit and put it into arena. So it ended up being a kind of a hybrid arena cross, which was like crazy log sections, rock sections, water pit. They threw in tractor tires to really, kind of a trials style type thing.
Because when we're out there on the trails, we always hit tractor tires.
I think part of the thought was trials type as well. The higher speed. In trials, you also kind of qualify through the day. And I think
it was almost like a motocross mixed with trials, mixed with
exactly.
It was just this big conglomeration.
Exactly. And then, so that's what I was training for. And I was a guy who always excelled more on the technical type stuff. For me, Graham Jarvis or not Graham Jarvis, Jeff Aaron, just like I was talking about earlier, I was watching Jeff Aaron when I first started racing AMA Endurocross. At the time, he was on a Christini, which was the two-wheel by drive 300s. He was so good. Just his style. He had this feet on the peg style, and that's what I emulated. I just wanted to keep my feet on the pegs. I wanted to ride right like a trials rider. I was never a trials rider, nothing like that, but that's how I wanted to ride. So I, going into those races, I was always good on the more technical stuff. Well, as Endurocross has kind of moved forward and evolved, it has kind of got a little bit more jumpy, and it's got a
less technical,
and that was always kind of a
faster.
thing.
It's gotten faster.
Absolutely, it got a lot faster. It wasn't that it was, it wasn't that it was more for the moto guys, but it was almost like they were trying to appeal to get more moto guys to come into the sport.
Yeah.
I was never a guy who was very fast. I don't race moto. I was never a motocross racer. So towards the end of my Endurocross, stint, I was out at the motocross tracks, and I raced a whole motocross series, and just trying to get fast because my technical ability was always very good.
Yeah.
I hadn't raced any extreme enduros, and now it seems like in the United States, extreme enduro is growing. It's starting to become a lot more popular. Specifically here in the United States, it's huge in Europe, and the Europeans are incredible. They're pretty far ahead of us, I believe, in skill level.
Yeah.
And
they're what, 15, 20 years ahead.
Exactly.
Well, that may be an understatement. They may be more like 30 years ahead of us in that discipline.
Basically, what we're seeing in extreme enduro is very similar to what we did see in motocross, right? The US was ahead of Europe in motocross. We were just better. And now it's like Europe has completely caught up to us
and passed in a lot of ways.
Us in a lot of ways. I mean, with guys like Jeffrey Hurlings, and those dudes are just so crazy fast.
Yeah.
And so
US still focuses on Supercross.
Exactly.
That's where the money is.
Exactly.
So in the race teams, that's where the money is. That's where all the energy and
Exactly.
talent and effort and talent goes. And there isn't as much money for the outdoor national motocross stuff.
And the money in Europe is obviously of the outdoor.
Yeah.
There isn't any Supercross in Europe. So it's kind of similar now.
Follow the money, man.
Exactly. The money is in Europe for extreme enduro. That's where the money is in that discipline. And it hasn't been big here in the United States, but now it's starting to really grow. We're seeing a lot more extreme enduros pop up. And I believe personally that that's where the industry is going. And that's for a couple reasons, not just Endurocross. I still love Endurocross. Endurocross is great, but I've decided I'm going to kind of step away from Endurocross and go to extreme enduro because I think the sport is heading that direction. And also, I got to say, I tend to get hurt a lot on an Endurocross track. I push as hard as I can. Endurocross Endurocross track, all you're doing when you're training is hammering laps as many laps in a day as you can put down. I was just riding laps, different directions, ride it backwards, ride it forwards. You're riding the same track over and over, and you're trying to push the pace as hard as you can. You set your fastest lap time, and now you have to beat your fastest lap time.
Yeah.
And that's all you do. And there's only so far that you can go, and I tend to push as hard as I can, get in the moment, and crash and break bones. So that was kind of another reason towards pushing towards extreme enduro. Extreme enduro is a little bit more about patience. It's about focus and, it doesn't necessarily have to be you charging and going as hard as you can. It's about being able to hold momentum. You're never getting into a situation where you got to send some crazy, log triple, which I did a lot, which was scary. When you see on an endurocross track some triple that you can jump, that's 40 or 50 feet and it's built out of logs, it's a scary thing to jump it first. And I'm kind of over that.
Well, I love the candor. That's one of the things I love about you is you're not afraid to just tell it how it is. So, quick question then. So, unless I'm mistaken, you're riding the 250?
Yeah.
You're on a Husky TE250i.
Yes,
right?
TE250i.
So why when everyone else is running, because I love the 250s. I absolutely love them. I mean, I have my own thoughts about this, but I want to get yours. Why the 250 over the 300?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One was Husqvarna kind of was like, hey, we can give you more support if you ride a 250, if you push the 250 product, right? Because everybody wants a 300. It's the truth. Right. Everybody wants one. And it's not necessarily that the 300 is better. I mean, I've rode both of them. They're both awesome bikes. And it's not like you're gonna feel this insane difference if you get on a 300. There is a difference.
It's very subtle.
It's very subtle, and I don't think a lot of guys realize that.
They don't. The best kept secret in all of dirt bikes is the 252 stroke.
Absolutely. Another reason is I rode 250s at all times in Endurocross. 252 strokes. I always rode the motocross, the TC 250.
Okay.
And I would kind of, change the gearing and I always liked the snap of the 250. I liked the CDI. I liked the way that the engine is really, really, it's almost like the engine feels faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got a different power delivery.
Exactly.
And it's awesome.
I got used to that power delivery, and I found that on the 250 compared to the 300 TPI, although they were really similar, I felt like I was like, you know what, I can ride the 250. It's kind of similar to what I'm used to, and what I was used to was a TC 250.
Yeah, yeah. I always think it's so funny when people say like, oh, if you get the 250, you won't be able to do the technical stuff.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's spoken by someone who hasn't put very much time on the 250.
Right.
Because the 300 gives you some advantages in some of that, low RPM stuff, but it isn't something that can't be overcome with just a little bit more clutch control.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I've said to guys, the difference between the 250 and the 300 is like 1/2 pull of the clutch. And that's about it. You get into a technical situation and, you just adjust your style to fit the bike, and the bike works incredibly. I've shown a lot of guys in my teachings that it's not necessarily, especially in extreme enduro, specifically in extreme enduro, it's not necessarily the bike.
Oh yeah.
Just barely, we were out. I was teaching a kid named Jack Wilford. I just actually put this up on my Instagram, but I took his TC 85 and rode up a
double blip
up a, it's like a 3 or 4 foot tractor tire. And I can do that on any bike. I've rode over a Jersey barrier on a 701, and that's 300 and something pounds. It's not that it's not the bike, Nowadays, dude, bikes are so awesome. Every bike, every brand, it's awesome.
Well, and the better you are, the better you get, the bikes you can use them even better.
Absolutely.
So no, that's so cool. I love the 250. So I was pleasantly surprised when we were out there doing that training, and I'm like, here's a guy who's doing the most extreme stuff that I'm, in a situation that I'm in, and he's doing it on a 250 and loving it, and just making me and my buddy who are on 300s look like children. and it's because of the rider. It's not about the bike. It's about the rider. So tell me, and I'm going to ask the opposite question too, so you can prep for it. But what's your favorite part about racing? A lot of people think racing is the be all end all. What's your favorite part about it? I
mean, obviously the challenge. I mean, it's kind of like that thing that I wrote on the top of Instagram. I'm not having fun unless I'm miserable, and extreme enduro is the most miserable. At the time, I mean, truthfully, Last Dog Standing is a great example, because honestly, Last Dog wasn't that hard. It was just it's a mental game. How strong are you? How far are you willing to push yourself?
Mentally, wow.
Mentally, and in 102 degrees, there's no wind. Your Glen Helen Raceway, it's the driest dirt ever, and I mean, it's just, you're sucking in dust, and you've been riding for 2 days, and that mental game, I like that. I like the feeling of how far can you push yourself, and then when it's over, you're like, that was fun. At the time, it wasn't fun, But when it's over,
But looking back,
it was like, that was a blast. I'm ready to do it again. But at the time, I'm like, why am I doing this?
so the challenge. So
Absolutely.
your favorite part about racing is just the challenge.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
mental and physical exertion.
100%. It's and competition specifically is good for everybody. You have to understand where you line up in the, it's a great way to have a little bit of self-awareness. I've said a million times to people that I believe that self-awareness is the most important character trait a person can have, because you have to know who you are. And in competition, you learn who you are. You learn where you stack up against the best in the world. You learn how much better some guys are, and there's always somebody better. There's always somebody better. Even if you're Graham Jarvis, I'll tell you right now, there's somebody coming for Graham's jar.
Oh yeah, and
100%.
there's people that are better than him in certain disciplines.
Absolutely.
He's just a well-rounded guy.
Exactly.
But like Johnny Walker is better at certain things.
Sure.
And
you can do
Andreas
the same thing
Lettenbichler
with
and Manny
absolutely. And I mean, look at Colton and Cody. Those are two prime examples of Colton is such a moto guy, and he has this different mind of, Colton does 360s on dirt bikes, which is, ridiculous. And then Cody has this other side of things, which is like this grit and this ability to, obviously ride at a huge technical level, extremely good. And these two guys are two of the best in the world. And it's like that everywhere. There's always somebody who is better than in one way or the other. And, competition brings that out of you. It's good to learn who you are when all the chips are stacked against you, when you're in a race and you just know you can't finish, and then you finish, you learn a lot about yourself. You go, oh man, I actually could have kept going. And that kind of stuff is so important because, in competition, it teaches me more about my personal life on whole, a million different levels.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. So then the other side of that coin is, what's your least favorite part about racing?
Well, racing's always terrifying. I'm a nervous guy, and a lot of guys, and I don't know, maybe they're all lying, but I always ask everybody, hey, are you nervous? I'm on the line. I'm the guy who's, in endurocross, I want to puke. When I race endurocross and you're in the AMA and you're sitting on the gate and it's a full stadium and the spotlight's on you and they got NBC Sports camera here and you're freaking out. And I'm the guy who taps the guy next to me. I don't care who it is, whether it's, Jeff Aaron or Max or Colton or whoever, best endurocross rider ever next to you, he's better than you. And I tap him on the shoulder and say, hey man, are you nervous? And
what do they say?
Most of them say no.
But you think it might be BS?
I think they're lying, but dude, maybe I'm just a big wuss.
Well, because I'm with you. I think probably, and maybe the more you,
maybe it's like a little bit of like them convincing themselves that they're not nervous. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that they are. I think if you're not nervous, and this is spoken from a person who doesn't race, but sure. I watch a lot. I watch a lot of racing, and I'm just like, how could you not be nervous,
dude? When I watch
with all of the things that are on the line, Supercross is the one I watch the most of. You've got so much riding on
absolutely, man,
and the risks that you're about to take in about 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How could you not be nervous
when I watch Supercross? Like I get, I freak out because I can picture myself on the line, and I'm like, oh man, this is. I get nervous watching Supercross. I get nervous watching motocross. Anytime I see a gate drop, I get nervous. So
blood pressure goes up.
Yeah. I hate being nervous. And in racing, you're nervous. Every time I race, I'm kind of grumpy too. Like before,
right before,
I'm like really rude, and I always feel really bad. And luckily,
who takes the brunt of that? Is your wife?
Yeah. So luckily, she's like, I get it. She's so like, and that's a huge thing. Is like, the whole reason I am where I am is because of her as well. There's a million different parts to my story. And, to have somebody that's like, yep, all right, I believe that you can make a living doing this. that's really important. You got to have that support system, right? And so, I don't know what my point is. My point is when I'm on the line, I'm really rude to her. So I've got a really nice support system, and I'm mean.
So that's a perfect kind of segue into this. Do you like racing? Do you love that whole part of it? Maybe you can talk about that.
Honestly, I don't really like racing. I like. It's just like I said. I like the race when it's over. When it's done, then I like it. But I know when I have a race coming up, like I said, I've got a race coming up here soon. I start getting nervous maybe a month before. When I really start hammering with my riding, when I'm really starting to feel it, and I'm going, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to get this set up. I need to get everything in order. This is my race. And then I start thinking about results. The problem with racing for me is I am so results driven, and I teach I teach a lot of racers, and I always tell them, don't live in your results, because there's so much more to this industry than your results. You can make it without results. You can make it without being a racer. Don't focus on your results. Be the person that is a slice of everything. Be the guy who is a good media person. Be the guy who can promote a product. Be the guy who can speak. You have to be able to be a jack of all trades in the industry. Be a good racer. Be a good rider. You have to be able to do everything. A lot of guys coming up, they focus 100% on their results. And when they don't get the results, they lose it. And I've seen it so much, especially from younger guys coming up now. Now I'm seeing extreme enduro riders that are 19, 20 that are going to be really, really good. And I watch these guys, they go out and say they don't get the result that they want. They are just beat, and they're so sad, and they're grumpy, and dude, I've done that. So anybody who's going to listen to this, who's a racer, and you're living in your results every time, if you don't get the result that you want, you're angry at yourself for a week, you're wasting time, because it is a waste of time, man. And so with that, that's kind of the part that I don't like about racing, because I am always the guy who, before the race, I'm like, okay, I think I'm capable of top 10. Okay, now this is where I need, a great example is Tennessee Knockout. Tennessee Knockout was just barely. I trained really hard for it. I'm ready to go. I was running really well as the race got a little bit more technical. It wasn't necessarily the most technical race ever. It was pretty easy, but there was some hard sections, and as it got more technical, I started making passes, and I think I was running well within the top 15. And, in my head, I thought I am capable of being right around that 10th position. I think that I can be there. And
generally you are, you're a top 10 type guy, right?
And that's what I want to do. Tennessee Knockout's the biggest race in the United States. And that's where I wanted to be at that race. And everything was going great. And, the first time it's ever happened to me, I had a mechanical issue, and my slave cylinder failed on me, and it is what it is. But in that happening, it was so disappointing, because I was running so good, and I knew that I had it. I was there. I felt great. I had a whole bunch left in the tank. I knew I was going to make it, and having to limp my bike, across the line with no clutch was very disappointing. And I was super bummed about it, but that's racing. That's the name of the game. And, you love it and you hate it. And those results, they bum me out. And that's a lot of times why I don't like racing, is because sometimes you don't get, a lot of times you don't get the results you wanted.
And sometimes it's out of your control.
Absolutely. Just like that. And, that's the part of racing I don't like. The nerves are tough. A lot of that kind of stuff is really hard on me. But like I said, I'll always race, because it gets in your blood, man. It's weird. I can sit here and say, I hate racing and I don't want to do it anymore. But then when I go to even a local enduro cross and I'm not racing, I'm thinking I should be out there racing. What am I doing? You know what I mean? So
that's so funny. So here's another thing I wanted to ask you about. So a lot of the viewers that I have, at least on my YouTube channel, are trail riders or weekend warriors, that type of person, somebody who maybe rides once a month or maybe once a week.
Yeah.
So if we look at that type of a rider, what are the best skills or techniques for that type of rider to be working, or even like a desert racer, because a lot of the guys I ride with or whatever, they'll race a desert race like a USRA race or something like this, Hare and Hound or something, and they'll race a couple of those a year. So speaking about that guy, I know it's a broad audience, but what are some of the best skills and techniques for that rider / weekend warrior racer to focus on?
Well, here's the thing. First off is that is 99% of people that ride a dirt bike. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Totally.
And this is what I love about what you've done and other guys like you. It's not about being the best racer on earth. It's not about being the guy who's results driven. I was just saying, don't live in your results, because truthfully, your results don't necessarily matter. The results that matter are the guys who are at the 0.00001%. That's, we're talking about the Eli Tomac's, the Colton Hakers, the Cody Webbs,
Jeffrey Hurlings,
the Hurlings, those guys, those are the guys who care about results. Everybody else.
And that's where all the money is too.
Exactly. But there is a huge slice of money in the 99%. And that's what you've marketed yourself to, is you're a guy who just loves dirt bikes. And you say, okay, this is my thought on this product. Because I'm not saying I'm the best rider on earth. I'm not, and a lot of guys want to buy the best product from the guy who is the best rider. And that doesn't necessarily make any sense, because why would you want to buy the best product from the best rider? Because you're not the best rider. You should be learning from the guys who are just like you, who want to learn, who want to test products. Guys don't have time to test 10 different tires. Guys don't have time to or money to every weekend put on a different tire. Yeah, exactly. So the average consumer is what you have marketed yourself to. And that's kind of what I want to market myself to as well. Even though I am I'm a racer and I'm a hardcore guy when it comes to dirt bikes. But the biggest part of this sport, the people who keep the sport running, is that 99%. And those are the guys who just enjoy riding a dirt bike. They have no ambition of being the best racer or the best rider. They just enjoy riding. And those are the guys that you have marketed yourself to. And those are the guys that I'd love to market myself to. So in that, there is a lot of little things that you can do to, take your riding to the next level. And not only take your riding to the next level, but do it in a safe way. That, a lot of guys, they I don't know if you just saw this clip of the guy who rode off that cliff on
up in Colorado, right?
Exactly. There's a lot of little things that I think that I could have taught that guy.
Absolutely.
That would have completely changed that. And
because he was on a Jeep road, a road wide enough that people had driven trucks up, and he ended up riding off the side of it. And and there's some things that he did wrong there.
Absolutely. But so it's not just about being a better rider, it's about also being a safer rider, because sometimes safety, that kind of stuff you get into situations like that, and then before you know it, you're in a situation like that, and it happens real quick. So there's a lot of little things that you can work on with balance, throttle, clutch control, learning how to control your bike at the highest level. Your bike is it's an extension of you. And that's why I love dirt bikes so much. It's like you're a superhero. When you become a really, really good rider, on the days when I'm clicking, man, and I'm up in the mountains by myself and I feel like I can't get stuck. I feel like I'm Graham Jarvis. You feel like you're the best rider on earth. Or if I'm out on like a sand track, I'll go out in fall and spring. I like riding wet sand as fast as I can. And I feel like I'm Jeffrey Hurlings on the sand track. That feeling is what I'm always shooting for.
Yeah.
And as an amateur or somebody who's coming up who wants to learn little things, it's little simple things that can help you immensely. Learning how to squeeze with your knees, learning how to properly use the throttle and the clutch together. A lot of guys are like stuck on over revving the bike and spinning their tires. And especially, if you get into a little bit more extreme situation, when you're getting into more rocks and stuff, guys will just hammer the throttle. Guys will they get stuck, they spin their tires, they waste energy. There's little things that you can do to completely save energy. And then in the future part of the ride, you're not as tired when you get into those insane situations that happen really quick. You're not as tired. So then you're less likely to get hurt. A lot of that crash that guy had, I believe a lot of it was from fatigue. Just the way I was looking at his body position. I mean, he may not even know that he was tired. A lot of times you don't know that you're tired, but then suddenly you're losing the direction that you want to be going.
And so much of it is mental too.
Absolutely.
And looking where you're going. That's
huge.
So he looked off the side and then boom,
then it's over.
And there are certain things that I will go on where people will see maybe in a YouTube video or some clip on, on Instagram or whatever. And they're like, how did you ever get in that situation? Why were you there? Well, there's a process to this thing.
Right.
There's a process. You don't just start going on the hardest trails.
No.
And my skill is far below yours, but to, someone who doesn't understand dirt bikes, they'll look at some of the things that I'm doing and they're saying, why would you take that risk?
Right.
And you go, well, I didn't just start this yesterday.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of going along with what you're saying is we need to be safe about this. We need to use a calculated approach to our training and our practice.
Absolutely.
So that we don't get in over our heads, because the 99% of the guys that you're talking about that are riding dirt bikes, they have jobs.
Absolutely.
And you can't just break your leg and still support your family. So you have to take you have to take care of your body and use calculated risks and baby steps. But the balance, I love it. I love that you talked about balance because I think,
man, balance is a huge part of the game, dude. It's like, it's one of those things that people don't realize. I mean, a lot of guys can't afford a trials bike. Nowadays I do ride trials, but when I first started, I can't afford a trials bike. So I was doing trials technique on the big bike, but learning that trials technique on the full size bike, it's possible to do. Balance, static balance, hopping the front end, all of those things, learning how your suspension reaction to your body weight moving, those kind of things help you so much in the long run. Learning those trials techniques, you don't need a trials bike. You can do it on a big bike, and it will take your riding to the next level, and it's going to help you ride twice as safe.
And the confidence, the thing that working on the balance for me does for me is it gives me confidence in those gnarly situations. I'm doing full lock turns. I'm doing some different things. Yeah. And I'm on a much lower level than you as far as the balance goes. But we were just up in Idaho a couple weeks ago before I broke my finger, and we had this nasty storm pop up, right?
Right.
And it was just it was the most amount of wind and rain I'd ever ridden in, and it was super cold. And we're going down these tight switchbacks in this nasty boulder field, and it's so steep that I was trying to block out the wind. I was trying to block out the elements, but because I had put the time in, I'm putting the time in to work on my balance. Here I'm making my way around these tight switchbacks without putting a foot down, and I'm able to block everything out and trust my skill that I can make it through this even when the wind is trying to blow me over. And I got partway down one of these switchback sections, and I'm going, the reason I'm able to do this right now is because of all that balance practice.
Yeah.
Because and just your confidence. If you have confidence going into something, you're going to be that much more safe.
Dude, that feeling is the best feeling. When you're certain type of training that it's almost like, especially static balance, you can go out and do it in the grass and just practice trying to keep your feet on the pegs without putting your feet down, right? Static balance. And doing that kind of training, you're thinking, is this even helping me? But then when it clicks in that exact situation that you were talking about, when the training that you've been putting in clicks, there's no better feeling.
Yeah, when you're now confident to lock the bars against the stops on a nasty hill where you can fall off a 15-foot cliff, and you just pin it against the stops and go around and drag that brake or whatever technique you're using and go around a turn, and then you're going, I got this.
Yeah,
and
totally.
it's those little things. It also helps you, you talked about using the suspension and using the technique to move your front wheel around and your back wheel around. You conserve so much energy. So I love that you brought that up.
One thing about that, a lot of guys see Graham Jarvis, right, do the slow wheelie. And there's a reason why Graham is so good at slow wheelies. And there's a reason why I'm very good at slow wheelies, because that technique is confidence instilling. Before a race, dude, I'm slow wheeling everywhere. I got to get into the zone. It puts me in the zone. I'm one with my bike now. I have complete control. I can drag the fender. I can stop make the front tire stay in one place and go nowhere. It's the ability to have complete control over your bike is something that instills so much confidence in you when you're in the most extreme situations. That feeling of confidence helps you get through the worst situations. And there's a reason why Graham does those slow wheelies. It's not just because it's awesome. It's because it's a great technique to know.
It's perfecting his craft.
Absolutely.
Too. This is one of the things I love about your training and the way that you approach this is I did a 2-day ride with Graham, and I specifically asked him, or somebody did, hey, is the slow wheelie is this a technique that helps you in racing situations or whatever extreme? And he's like, no, it just looks cool. And that was just maybe him just,
Sure.
But you will say, no, there is a reason to practice this because this is what it does for me. And I know Graham knows that.
No, for sure.
You just have a better way to articulate, and you're like, this is how it helps you.
Here's the thing. Imagine you're in, here's one example. I can think of them immediately. Here's an example. You're up in an extreme situation. You're up in the mountains, right? You're doing switchbacks. Switchbacks, that is a wheelie technique. You're doing a wheelie. When you're doing a switchback, your bike, to efficiently do a pivot turn switchback, your bike needs to hit the balance point. Understanding where your balance point is, understanding and having complete control over your balance point in a wheelie is going to help you and have full confidence when you do a switchback at the balance point. When you're in a super, super steep situation in the mountains, you feel that balance point on your bike all the time. Whether you're pushing the bike up a hill, you're in a cliffed out situation, wherever you are, if you're moving your bike around, you feel that balance point. And understanding where it is going to be the difference between you being able to handle the balance point or you panicking, which I've seen a million guys do.
I do that
they
all the
get
time.
into the balance point, they panic, they let go. Now your bike's tumbling, and you just tumbled a $10,000 bike off a 15-foot cliff.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times, and it's all to do with the balance point. If those guys were comfortable with slow wheelies, that wouldn't happen because they understand the feeling of what it is to be in that. The balance point feels like you're floating.
Yeah.
When you're doing a wheelie, you really don't have to give it any gas. And that's one reason why slow wheelies are important, man. All these little skills, it's those little skills that can be the difference between you crashing and you continuing forward.
Yeah. So tell me this, what's your feeling on weight training or cardio as far as for the average dirt biker out there? Maybe does it help for the racer at your level? And then Is this something that the average weekend warrior should also be doing?
So obviously, that's another huge reason why I love racing is because it's also about training. It's about physically how far you can push yourself. So whether you're a racer or just a guy who goes out and enjoys riding, there's a point where you will get too far and you will be too tired. My brother, Rob, we go out riding quite a bit. And I have this saying that whenever we get towards the end of the ride, he turns into a wet noodle. He's a really tall dude. He, looks like a wet noodle out there, and he'll just fall over going nowhere because he's so tired. The guy's in great shape, but obviously the stuff we're doing is pretty serious. And that focus on physical shape, whether it is, there's no replacement for bike time. You have to put in a lot of time on the bike, but even for a guy that's a weekend warrior, being able to understand your body. I do a lot of cardio, man. Whether it is riding or on a spin bike, there was times when I was doing, interval training for an hour and 1 minute on, 1 minute off for an hour just to see if I could do it. And, you're 1 minute to your maximum heart rate and then 1 minute off. This isn't necessarily maybe good for you, but it's good for you mentally because in understanding, it's just like we were talking about confidence building, right? Being able to wheelie, that's a confidence builder. Being able to balance, that's a confidence builder. Knowing how hard you can push your body, that's a confidence builder, man. I like to test myself and see how far I can go. So that's on my level, right? I like to say, let's see how gnarly I can do this. Let's take the spin bike and try to max my heart rate out for 20 minutes.
Is that your preferred cardio, a spin bike?
No. Oh, yeah. Preferred cardio, yeah. Spin bike or rower. I love rowing and spin. That kind of stuff, you can kind of set a goal.
Yeah.
A rower, right? You can see, okay, how quick can I do a 5K?
Yeah, that's been my go-to.
I just my 5K under 17 minutes or something, right?
Dude, if you're doing under 17 minutes, I want you to walk out of here right now. Because I rode 4 million meters on that rower in the other room, and I've never been anywhere near 17 minutes.
Sure.
I'm around 20 at my best.
Right. I think the best I've ever done is like, I feel like it was like 18. I think my goal was like 17:59. I wanted a 17:59. It's the same with like a mile.
Oh, man.
I love running. Like, I don't run a lot, but the last time I ran a mile, it was like, okay, how much is it going to take? I take everything to the 10th degree. So I'm like, okay, now I can run a 5:59. Okay. What's it going to take for me to get a 4:59 mile?
Whoa.
That's what I want. The fastest I've ever done a mile is like a 5:38. And I'm like, no, hold on. Am I training to be a runner or am I training to be a dirt bike rider? Like, what am I doing? But so my point is just going to the gym for the average rider. If you go to the gym for 30 minutes, go get a good workout in the weekend before a ride or the week before a ride. Let's say you ride on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, you go to the gym on Wednesday. I promise the confidence that you will get from just going to the gym and focusing on maybe your deadlift, trying to, gain a little bit of strength, gain a little bit of cardio, whatever it is, that confidence that you get from a good training session on Wednesday will bleed into your ride on the weekend.
Love it.
And it's super important, man. Health in general, man. There's nothing better than knowing that you can run at full speed for a long time. I like to know that I can push myself at my maximum. I like to test myself and say, okay, let's max my heart rate out and see how long I can do it for. Let's see how fast my recovery is.
Do you use a heart rate monitor?
I do. I
should probably get one of those.
I love testing my recovery. How many beats in a minute I can recover. I want to, I'm like, okay, I can recover 70, 75 beats in a minute. That means that basically I can max myself out and lay down and not move and be back to my resting heart rate in 1 minute. There's a confidence that you feel from being very physically fit. And that bleeds into your performance as a rider, whether you're a racer or a weekend warrior, it will help you.
Well, I've been saying this for years, that it would be better because everyone's worried about how much their bike weighs. And I'm going, it would be better for you to lose 10 pounds than for your bike to lose 50 pounds.
100%.
You will be better off losing 10 pounds than if we shave this part off your bike. And I always feel like, a lot of people will dump all this money into their bikes. They'll dump, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in their bike, maybe even $4,000 if they're doing custom suspension. And I look at them, and I'm not trying to judge anybody because everyone's in a different position, but I look at them and I go, you look like you're carrying some extra pounds.
Sure.
And if you spent a little bit more time on your physical condition, these problems you're having on the bike, a lot of them would disappear.
A lot of people,
am I right?
100%, man. I'm sure, those are kind of things that a lot of people will disagree, and they'll disagree all the way to their grave. Sure. But here's the thing. I truthfully, I ride a stock bike. I don't do a lot to my bike at all. And I've top 10 quite a bit at the highest level. These bikes are awesome. Just like I'm saying back in the day.
I want you to repeat that right now. You ride what kind of bike?
A TE 250i Husqvarna, and it is stock.
And I love that. I love that you can admit that and be like, look, this bike, there's so much capability in this.
Sure.
Are you maxing out the potential of your dirt bike?
Here's the thing. I feel like guys could ride it. Obviously there's guys that are better than me. So I think that Graham Jarvis could get on my dirt bike and take it to the next level. It truthfully doesn't matter about your trick parts and your trick suspension. Dude, guys spend so much money on the cone valve fork. And cone valves are awesome, man. I'll tell you what, Graham runs them. Sure. Cone valves are sick, but are they worth
$6,000?
$6,000? I don't think they are, man. Are they worth a full nother bike? I just don't think it's, I mean, would I put them on my bike if I got them for free? Yeah, but I'm not going to spend $6,000 on it, dude. I mean, I've rode
this is what I love about you. Your ability to just cut through the BS and be like, look, it's about what I'm doing. It's not about what, trick parts I have.
It's not at all, man. I mean, dude, guys of us even, I'm one of those guys that doesn't like, all I want to do is ride. I don't have time to, I don't even have time to put guards on my bike. I'll put a skid plate on. That's about it, man. I'm one of those guys that all I want to do is ride. I just want to put in the time and better myself as a rider. And the products that we have nowadays, whatever product, whatever rider, whatever bike you're riding, the ability of that bike is far, I think it's got so much more potential than you can even, I think there's even more potential that I can squeeze out of my stock bike right now. I truthfully, first thing you got to do, it's just like self-awareness, man. You've got to look at yourself first before you start throwing parts on your bike. You've got to look at yourself first. So are you in the best physical shape you can be in? Are you putting in the ultimate amount of time on the bike? And you know what? There's a lot of guys that love buying things, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you like, I'll tell you what, I love looking at cone valve forks. They are beautiful. I love looking at whatever part, this trick head, S3 head on your bike. Dude, those things are pretty. I love looking at them. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to trick out a bike. I see nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I don't do anything to my bike at all except for clickers.
Less is more.
I just adjust my clickers. I set my sag. I make sure it's sprung right. I don't change valving. I don't change much of anything.
I love that.
It's worked out okay.
And you and I are in the weight range where we can do that for sure.
Absolutely.
They're basically building these bikes for you and I. What do you weigh?
173.
Yeah, there you go. About. See, I'm 165-ish, so right in there. So it's easy for us to say that, but it's, dude, you're tooting on the horn that I've been tooting on forever.
Right on.
So what about diet nutrition? Like what do you do for that? Do you think this is important? How much of a...
So this is another one that might be kind of controversial, but I've really found comfort in intermittent fasting. I'm super focused on that. And basically that means I eat one meal a day.
Cool. I know other riding buddies that are doing that.
I ride on an empty stomach a lot of times. And there's a couple reasons that I've actually found from doing and kind of testing this, but I eat one giant meal.
Is it later in the day?
Later in the day.
It's like a dinner time.
Yeah, dinner time. Usually I do, big salad, big steak, meat, protein, all of that, right? I like to have a big giant meal. I have found that my performance when I'm on an empty stomach, I think clearer. I don't feel like I'm weighed down. I feel like eating breakfast. Yeah, I even feel like all I do is I drink coffee in the morning and I hammer down. So I will go out and train on a fully empty stomach and I can push myself. I feel like there's a certain point where you click into this kind of ketosis type situation where you're burning your fat. I don't know. I felt like it has worked really well for me. And then on the race days, I will have a little bit of food, and it's almost like it's like an extra little gear that I get.
So you don't gorge yourself.
I don't gorge myself, just a little bit. I'll have like for example, at the time I was eating still, I've been doing this for maybe a year and a half or so, and I feel like it's worked really well for me. At the beginning of the year, I was racing Texas Rev Limiter, and I ate a big meal the night before, and then I raced during the day at Texas, and I would have like rice cake with peanut butter and a banana. Nothing big
keep
at
your
all.
Blood sugar levels
keep my
up.
blood sugar levels high, and I truly feel like when you kind of snack throughout the day after being completely adapted to intermittent fasting, it's like you get this extra gear on the day that you need it, which is the race day.
Interesting. That's so cool. So just kind of as we're wrapping up here, I have a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. I feel like, and you can disagree with me here, I feel like off-road riding, and I'm just going to use this big term of off-road riding. We could talk about enduro cross and extreme enduro. I'm just going to lump, and even trail riding, I'm going to lump it into just this off-road riding. I feel like it's growing at least here in the western part of the United States, seems to me like there's a lot of adults getting into this at a later age, like when they're 25 to 50,
Sure.
just getting into it. And I also feel like more people are moving from track to trails. I could be totally biased on that. Do you agree with that? And do you think, and if you do, why do you think there's a shift?
So I do agree with it. One thing that you can see, look at how many people are going to the GNCCs on the East Coast.
Okay.
It is packed. Like we're talking 10,000 people going to these outdoor races. Just every single round, there is a huge amount of people going and watching, viewing, being interested in the GNCC. There's a lot of money right now in Grand National Cross Country, and I think, especially in the market that I'm currently in, which is working for IRC Tire, right? IRC is focused on their gummy tires. That's what we've been pushing a lot. We've developed our gummy tires, and we're continuing to develop our gummy tires. We want to make the best product possible. And the way that you're seeing all these new brands put out gummy tires, I think that there's a huge surge of this extreme trail rider, right? These guys that love going up, doing single track, they get into extreme situations at time to time. They want the tire that's going to work best. So this is from my side of, understanding it through the market that I'm in, which is gummy tires. I'm in the gummy tire market. Well, guys are looking for a tire that's going to work well everywhere. Guys want a tire that they can go and ride 100 miles of single track trail, but when it gets into the extreme situation, they want a tire that's going to outperform the regular motocross compound.
Sounds like we're talking about the VE33S.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's absolutely one of the tires. But the thing is exactly what I'm saying. There's a lot of brands that are making great tires.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gummy tires out there, and there's more and more coming. We've seen new ones hit the market just recently, right? So these new tires is kind of a indicator, that people are now riding the trails more. They're seeing what kind of trails, what kind of stuff they can get into in the mountains. And when they get into those situations, they want a tire that's going to perform. And that's where hybrid tires, gummy tires come into play.
Yeah, no, I love it. I totally agree. So last question here that I had for you is, do you think that less kids, because I feel like there's a lot of adults that are getting into the sport. I got into the sport when I was 29, so right around 29 or 30, somewhere in there. And I feel like I have those people emailing me all the time saying, hey, I'm just getting into this. Or maybe I was into it before, I took a 10, 15-year break and I'm getting back into it. But my question for you is, do you think less kids like 15 and under are learning to ride today than maybe they did 20 years ago?
I would assume so. I think that probably...
seems like they're all playing video games.
Yeah, that's I don't want to sound like an old man.
I'm painting with a broad brush.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I just wonder what you've seen with because you have a lot different contacts than me.
I mean, obviously there still is a market for the mini bikes, and I guess there's a lot of different levels. There's a lot of different layers to this whole conversation. Back in the 90s, right, you had guys like Jeremy McGrath, which was like the king of cool. He was the guy that you were just like, this guy is so cool. He goes out and he's out in Havasu on a boat, and then he goes and races and murders everybody on the weekend. He's so much better than everybody, and he's the chillest dude. And
but he was still relatable, right?
But he was relatable, and you wanted to be like him.
But Eli Tomac, are you saying Eli Tomac is relatable?
I would say that less guys. I mean, Eli Tomac doesn't. I mean, and that's okay. But Eli Tomac doesn't post anything on social media. He doesn't. You don't really get an insight into his life. And he said that specifically. Like, I don't want people knowing what I'm doing. Yeah. I don't want people knowing my training. This is a different game. So I think nowadays motocross has slowly turned into a sport that is more like, let's say, F1 racing. Those guys are F1 racing is almost unobtainable. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think that people are starting to realize that the highest level of the sport, your Ken Roxons, your Eli Tomacks, your Marvin Muskins, your Jeffrey Hurlings, all those guys, that level is almost unobtainable.
And if you don't start riding by the time you're 3
Right.
or 4 or 5,
Right.
it's never going to happen.
Right. And it's a young man's
at
sport,
least
too.
most. I mean, for
the most part.
there are some guys that started a little bit later, but they're not
Sure.
top 3 podium supercross
Exactly.
guys.
No, absolutely. And it's a young man's sport, man. You got to be kind of young and dumb too, right? I mean, you got to be down to send it nowadays.
And it takes your whole family to sacrifice all,
100%.
like mom and dad have to have 2 jobs and mortgage the house and just like put all of the resources into this one kid. And if it doesn't work,
Sure.
now where are we as a family?
These top end moto supercross guys they're almost like guys that you can't even relate to because they are so, it's like their royalty, right? Off-road riding's a lot different. I'll tell you right now, you can go up to Colton Haker and he will shake your hand and talk to you. You can go up to Cody Webb and he will shake your hand and talk to you. You can go up to Graham Jarvis doing ride days. I mean, when's the last time Eli Tomac did a ride day?
I don't know if he ever has.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, these off-road guys are doing ride days. You get to meet them. You get to ride with them. At Tennessee, you could go out and ride with Mario Roman. You could go out and ride with Wade Young. It's off-road as a community. Yeah. Off-road's a little bit more like, everybody's cool with each other. Everybody's kind of getting knows what they're getting into. Moto has, especially, in the late 2000s. I love motocross. I follow motocross. It's great. But, motocross is a little bit more niche-y almost, like especially within the industry is what I mean.
Yeah.
These guys aren't looking for friends. They're looking for wins. And the thing is you have to respect that on a very high level because these are the highest level of the sport. That's the pinnacle of the sport is motocross and supercross. And it takes everything you can do, everything you can put into it and more to be at the highest level. So you have to completely respect these guys, but understanding that, I think nowadays it's less of an obtainable thing for the average person. You could be like Jeremy McGrath in 1995.
But it's tougher now.
But off-road, you can still relate to these guys. You can still shake Taylor Roberts' hand. I mean, you want to see a guy ride, watch Taylor Robert. That guy's unreal.
Yeah. And the thing that interests me, like just like what you were saying, I feel like I can relate more to the off-road rider / racer because they're doing similar things to what I'm doing.
Absolutely, man.
You know what I mean? I don't relate to a 90-foot triple or a quad, coming out of a corner. I love to watch that on TV, but I don't relate to it as much.
You can almost, and it's like you can almost obtain that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I see you doing things, or Graham or Colton doing things that I'm maybe never going to do, but I'm like, I might be able to do that one thing.
Do that one thing, exactly.
And so it just relates to me a little bit more.
We don't know where it's going, but I don't know. You just keep hammering down and enjoy it. And, I sure am.
Well, this has been so fantastic. I don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate you coming over and sharing your thoughts and sharing your experience.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me
with the viewers.
How
do people find you? I mean, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but what's the best place for them to find you?
So I mean, obviously Instagram at Rich Larsen 511. Hit me up, man. Direct message me. I'll talk to you. It's funny. I actually just had a dude call me. I don't even know how he got his number, but I'll talk to you, man. I'm at the races too. I go to the Endurocross races. And I'm an IRC representative. IRC Tire. Check us out on YouTube. IRC Moto USA. Hit it up. I'm putting out videos as often as I can. I'm trying to do it as often as possible. Subscribe. That would help us out a lot. We're trying to make our tires more readily available. And the thing is IRC is a company that aligns really well with me. I'm a guy who, we're not claiming to be the best company on earth, but we are willing to change and develop, and we want to be with the grassroots riders. So I'm always down to ride. I'm always down to give a lesson. If you hit me up, I can promise you I'll give you a private lesson. So
I would highly recommend that. Like I said before, it is the best money that I've ever spent in training. I've had a number of
it's super cheap too. It's $100. I just want everybody to know. $100. It's I'll give you. I'll run you until you won't be able to ride anymore for sure.
I can attest to that.
If you feel like it. If you feel like being miserable, hit me up.
Oh, thank you so much, Rich. I will let you go, and maybe we'll do a follow-up episode down the road and just kind of see where things are at.
Kyle, thank you so much, man. I appreciate having on, and I'm very honored to be one of the first guest on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.